Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This is going to be I don't want to make this too long, but I wanted to make this video because it's a bit of a response video to Luther Manning's recent Week in Review. This is, with his latest Week in Review, it was about nostalgia, chasing nostalgia. Now, you should watch his video. I'll put his link in the description of this video. And maybe I'm not going to explain this exactly the way Patrick did in his video, or maybe I'm not really hitting the mark on it, but I felt that what he was talking about made a lot of sense and definitely made me think about why I still collect. Basically, I believe the gist of what Patrick was saying in his video was that, sometimes we collect to try to capture some of that old glory, that nostalgia of when we, way back in the day, when we used to collect these things, the happiness or the joy that it brought us, whether it was the joy of collecting or the joy of reading for the first time this story, getting introduced to these characters and so forth. And I do feel that a lot of my collecting is centered around nostalgia. As you know, I collect comic books, I collect video games. I collected a lot of the older video games. I'm not really big into collecting the new ones, even though you see a lot of Xbox 360 stuff here. But I'm really into the older generations, particularly PlayStation. I love to collect for PlayStation. And it does bring me a sense of nostalgia. It brings me back to a time when I first got the PlayStation, and it was a pretty good time in my life. I just started college. I was hanging out with a new group of people, which I desperately needed at that time. For anybody, that knows about my history, I don't think I really made it available to a lot of people, but back in the day, I could have used a different crowd. I could have used a new crowd to be around and to get away from other things. And that's where the PlayStation came in. And unfortunately, at that time, my comic book collecting I was about to go on a long vacation from it. So I would love to sit here and talk about, that part of my life, how PlayStation and the comic books worked together, but really where one started to phase out, another one came in. Because around the time when I first started collecting comic books back in 1993, I wasn't really playing too many video games. So the two sometimes weren't really working side by side the way they are today. So where one phased out for a while, the other one grew in popularity, and when that started to plateau, the other one came back, and so forth and so on. And I think a lot of us have that. But the point of this is nostalgia. I think back when I play certain games or I look at certain comic books that I've had in my collection, that I transported back to a time, as Patrick would say, these paper time machines, I'm transported back to a time where it was new, it was innocent, it was fun, it was fresh to collect these comic books, or to want certain comic books, or to want to play certain games, or you couldn't wait for a certain game to come out. And that's with all things. I'll sometimes watch a movie that I remember watching way back when, late at night. For instance, I remember as a kid in the early 90s watching Night of the Living Dead late at night. It would come on AMC or something. And that would bring back a feeling of nostalgia for me, And I would always try to recapture that. Sometimes I would try watching Night of the Living Dead late at night. And, it's not the same. It's just not the same. It's because I find myself falling asleep, I'm bored, or just this and that and this. And sometimes it's the same thing with gaming. I'm excited about gaming, I enjoy gaming, but at the end of the day, I'm just too damn tired to go back and play Mortal Kombat Trilogy and try to capture what made that game so great in from September 1996. It's just not there anymore. I could appreciate it. I'm happy I have that game. I'm happy I could play it every now and then. But trying to chase that old nostalgia, maybe other people don't feel the same way, and that's fine. I'm just speaking for myself. And I think it's pretty much what Patrick was saying too. It's just not there as strongly as it was back then. Trying to recreate or capture that nostalgia just doesn't work as much. And I found that as I start thinking about it, I'm like, instead of trying to recapture some of those old-time memories, that nostalgia, I should try working on some new ones so that maybe 10 years from now I can think back to this point in time and say, and feel nostalgic about it instead of trying to always chase that old nostalgic feeling. Now, that doesn't mean that collecting anything, comic books or whatever, is, a futile attempt at trying to regain something that was once important to you. I mean, it's still a wonderful and rewarding hobby. It's rewarding to have any sort of hobby that you could think back to that brings a smile on your face, that where you can look forward to going to a con and trying to get a book that maybe you never had, or a book that you're going to upgrade and it puts a smile on your face. Of course, that's not a futile thing to do. It's still as much fun, but I found that just trying to sometimes recapture some of that old glory, it's in the past. And that's probably where it should be, and that's what makes it special. Sometimes you just can't recapture it. You can't recapture the joy of first reading, John Byrne's X-Men run and so forth. It may not have the same impact. Or maybe it does for some people. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. But it's just sometimes it's not the same, It's like you watch a movie. I remember watching movies back when I was a kid and thinking that they were funny or they were good. And sometimes they'd be on TV. And I'm like, I haven't seen this in, 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm watching it. And I'm like, oof, this is painful to get through, I think a lot of us do sometimes, those of us that have been in the hobby for a period of time, sometimes try to recapture some of that old glory. But it doesn't mean that it's not a good thing to do or a good thing to try for. But I, for one, have noticed that it's simply not the same. But that's just some of my thoughts on it. That's the way I feel about it. But, and honestly, and I think it's been going on with Patrick too. My collecting has changed, and I've mentioned this in other videos. How we come out with our top 10 lists. I want to get this. My top 10 list has drastically changed, and I think it's changed for the better. I think I've made some wiser choices in my top 10 list this year, and I've chosen books that bring me more happiness instead of trying to chase every damn first appearance there is, because it's just, at the end of the day, for me, I'm not saying it's not bad for anybody else. If you like doing that, you like having all the first appearances, great. That's up to you. It brings you happiness. That's what makes the hobby good for you. But as I reflect on nostalgia, as I reflect on my current collecting, I'm thinking that sometimes things change, and sometimes things are not as innocent or as fun as they once were. And that's what sometimes causes us to dramatically change the way we collect and how we look at collecting. It's just a phase I think that a lot of us have gone through or will go through at some point in our hobby careers. Well, that's all I pretty much wanted to say about this. Just wanted to share my thoughts on it. I thought Patrick put out a really good video, and it had me thinking. And I feel that making a video just discussing where I'm at with this is much better than leaving a super long comment on a page. And thank you all for watching.